Okay, so David, alcoholic addict again, and where we are picking up is we're on chapter 17, excuse me, page 17, chapter 2, there is a solution. Last week, we literally just read the first paragraph, couple of sentences, and so, I'll just read that again, and then we will keep rolling. Make sure I see David here and Sam for cues. Okay, perfect. So here we go, guys. Page 17, starting up the top again. Chapter 2, there is a solution. We of Alcoholics Anonymous know thousands of men and women who were once just as hopeless as Bill. Nearly all have recovered. They have solved the drink problem. David, why don't you come bang the drum again on a couple of key points from that paragraph? Oh, uh, I will fill time. All right. Well, David's figuring out his audio technical difficulties. I will bang the drum again. Okay. So a couple of key takeaways here, guys. First of all, we were just chit-chatting about before we started the meeting proper. There is a solution, right? Now, do we have a monopoly on recovering from alcoholism, alcohol addiction, or any other form? No, we do not. And God bless anybody else who can do it another way. But according to Alcoholics Anonymous, which was the book written by the first 100 people who recovered, they had a singular solution, right? And that's what's laid out in this book. And this is what gets introduced in this chapter, right? So there is a solution. It starts off by saying we. Who's the we, right? Originally, it was that first 100 or so people who got sober along with Bill, Dr. Bob, and the others. And so they wrote this book. So we of Alcoholics Anonymous, fellowship was named after the book, title of the book. Know thousands of men and women who were once just as hopeless as Bill. Why are they saying just as hopeless as Bill? Because we just got finished reading Bill's story, and nearly all have recovered. Recovered, past tense. The entire point here is to come in and understand and come to terms with, do I agree that I've got the problem laid out in step 1? If so, I'm presented the promises of the solution in step 12 to have a spiritual awakening, by which time I will have recovered from the hopeless state of mind and body. I'm not perpetually recovering. I get recovered. They have solved the drink problem. Technically, God solves it for us, but by doing the work and getting to God, the drink problem gets solved. David, is your audio situation? No, you can't. Here, hold on a sec. Maybe can you unmute?
Yes. Maybe you should make me co-host there.
Oh, yeah, because you dropped out. That's right.
Okay.
Go ahead, brother.
All right. So I couldn't sleep last night. So it starts out with we of Alcoholics Anonymous. So I thought the most tedious thing I could possibly do is open up the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and look at how many we's are in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, I counted them. There's 1,157 we's in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I did not do that. I was kidding. But I do know that's being a fact. But what they're talking about is what David said. Anytime we see the word we, we're talking about the first 100. And then David and I, we got this from Mark Houston probably. We take statements in the big book and turn them into questions. So as David read it there, said there's millions of us now we know of men and women who were once just as hopeless as Bill. The question there is, David, were you just as hopeless as Bill? Well, why would I know that? Well, the reason why I would know that is because I've read the doctor's opinion. I know that I break out in craving. And I relate to Bill's story. I drank, thought, and felt like Bill. I'm willing to do the things that Bill did. So I have this obsessive mind, this obsession that overrides all my good thinking. And I take a drink and I'm spiritually bankrupt. So yeah, I'm as hopeless as Bill. Nearly all have recovered. Well, in the first edition of the big book, it said all have recovered. Let's be clear there. All have recovered. So then it says, and they've solved their drink problem. That is a great promise. That is a absolute promise. Many promises in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. We'll point them out as we go.
We are average Americans. All sections of this country and many of its occupations are represented, as well as many political, economic, social, and religious backgrounds. We are people who normally would not mix, but there exists among us a fellowship, a friendliness, and an understanding which is indescribably wonderful. I'm going to pause there, David.
Yeah, I think, so it says we are average Americans. So we know that that was written and published in 1939. So now we are citizens of the world, much bigger than just average Americans. So we're speaking to way more people today, in all sections of this country. So not just this country, again, this world, and many of its occupations are represented as well as many political, economic, social, religious backgrounds. We are people who are not normally mixed. So we're not there talking about politics. We're not there talking about our favorite teams. Like you can't come because do that. We're talking about, and there's describing here as we get into a little farther in this paragraph. There's a description of a great fellowship, like what the fellowship is supposed to look like. Good.
We are like the passengers of a great liner the moment after rescue from shipwreck, when camaraderie, joyousness, and democracy pervade the vessel from steerage to captain's table. Let's pause there again. You can break down that analogy.
Okay, so the captain's table, if you're lucky enough to have that kind of money and you're the top of the ship, that's where the captain's table. That's you're sitting with the captain at dinner. That's the rich, rich, rich people. Then the steerage is way in the bottom of the ship where the rats are at, and it's hot. It's by the diesel engines, and it's just not the nicest place on the ship by any means. It's the worst place. But we are passengers like that great liner. And the moment of rescue, so at the moment of rescue, does it make a difference if we're at the captain's table or if we're at the steerage? It does not make any difference. We're in the water and we're all drowning. We are one trying to save our own lives here, being saved. So it doesn't make any difference what kind of walk of life that we come from here. And then it says, do we go any farther? Unlike the feelings of the ship's passengers, however, our joy and escape from disaster does not subside. Okay, sorry. Well, I need to tie that together a little bit, but okay. So what we're talking about here is this is the spirit of the fellowship. Remember, I'm going to talk about this in a minute too. There is 2 fellowships in Alcoholics Anonymous. Bill's talking about the spirit of the fellowship, the camaraderie that we have here, that we come from different walks of life, that we are in the ship and it gets wrecked. Wrecked means we're done. Good and for all, done. It doesn't matter what kind of walk of life we come from. We all need to work together on this.
So what's being set up here? So what's being set up is the way in which we suffer, similar. The way in which we are going to get better, similar. And alcoholism, addiction, the great equalizer. It doesn't matter, right? Where we're from. And again, this was 1939. It was a little group of people, mostly in the states of Ohio and New York, right? 100, and maybe not even 100. Bill says more than 100, but as I understand it from an AA historian, it was like 77 people. They had all gotten better. They're saying, listen, we're just normal American people. But as over time, right, as they wrote the book, and certainly as we know now internationally, we're all over the planet. But it doesn't matter. If alcoholism has taken us down, if addiction has taken us down, doesn't matter how much or how little money we have, doesn't matter the color of our skin, our gender, our orientation, who our parents were, who our kids are, none of that matters. Right? Alcoholism, addiction are the great equalizers, but so is recovery through 12 steps and God. That's the beautiful part. Right? So as David was just starting to dip into, and I'll just back up a sentence to pull it all together here. We're like the passengers of a great liner the moment after rescue from shipwreck, when camaraderie, joyousness, and democracy pervade the vessel from steerage to captain's table. And I should be looking at Sam. If you got any of these words, Sam. Unlike the feelings of the ship's passengers, however, our joy in escape from disaster does not subside as we go our individual ways. The feeling of having shared in a common peril is one element in the powerful cement which binds us. I'm going to read that again. The feeling of having shared in a common peril, so we're all in a really bad situation together, is one element in the powerful cement which binds us. But that in itself would never have held us together as we are now joined. Sam, anything in this?
Yeah, I have camaraderie. And then
Mhm.
vessel, which I didn't even know what a vessel was. I thought it was just like a vessel of a body or
That's okay.
but what he's saying it's the boat, which is the
Mhm.
definition of
Yes.
vessel. And then camaraderie is mutual trust, friendship among people who spend a lot of time together. So we're like the passengers of a great liner. The moment after rescue from the shipwreck, when mutual trust and friendship, joyousness, democracy prevailed the boat from steerage to the captain's table. And then I also have peril, which is described as a dangerous position. So the feeling of having shared in common a dangerous position is one element in the powerful cement which binds us.
Awesome. Thank you. Go ahead, David.
Okay, so as I described, the captain's table, people in the tuxedos, eating with the captain, rich, rich, rich. You gotta have old money to be doing that kind of stuff, especially back then. I mean, the Titanic sank, what, 25 years prior to the big books publishing. So this is probably fresh in Bill's mind. That's why he's using this analogy. Not sure. But, and then the steerage is the bottom of the ship. So we're all in the water drowning, trying to save each other's life. There's no difference between the both. We come into the fellowship, doesn't all different walks of life. But once the passengers get rescued and they're on the rescue ship, they get divided again. The rich go with the rich, the steerers go with the steerage people. No longer are we together again. That's not what happens in Alcoholics Anonymous. God forbid let's not that happen in Alcoholics Anonymous. I've sponsored lawyers, I've sponsored doctors, I've sponsored guys who lives in tents. Doesn't matter to me a bit. If you're desperate enough, you want to do this work, I'll take you through the work and I'll watch you, because the solution is a spiritual awakening. That is what we offer. That's it. It's the only solution we got. But it's way sufficient. My point being this, the fellowship isn't sufficient enough to keep me sober. Going to meetings and thinking through osmosis, the guy next to me who talks a good talk and comes out of the big book or doesn't even have his big book, but he makes a lot of good sense, it's not going to get me sober and keep me sober. I can go to 90 meetings in 90 days, 180 meetings in 90 days. Maybe that'll suffice for a bit. It's not the solution. Not for me anyways. It is just not sufficient enough. And then when they're talking about a feeling of having shared in a common peril, what is that common peril? It is the craving and the obsession we all have. If you have conceded your innermost self, we're not to page 30 yet. So if we're powerless over alcohol, then we have this craving that's beyond my control once I start taking a drink, and this obsession. Without my consent, without my permission, I pick up a drink. That's just one element of this. That is just the problem. That's why the fellowship is insufficient, because it's just, I'm only talking about the problem. I need to have, wait for it, it's coming in the solutions in the next paragraph. Got to have both.
So I think this is the first time one of Bill's building analogies has come up in what we've covered so far. And I'm sure David can talk about this a little bit more as we're getting to it. But so the feeling of having shared in a common peril is one element in the powerful cement which binds us. And so Bill's grandfather, right, was like a builder. And so Bill uses in his language, we're going to see other parts in the book. He's going to talk about the cement. He's going to talk about the foundation. We're going to get into various stones, foundation stones and cornerstones the hell third step. Why am I brain farting, David?
The arch.
Are going through the arch, and what's the stone at the top of the third step?
Keystone.
Thank you. The keystone, Rob, with the save.
Gotcha.
Thank you. So this is going to keep coming up, because Bill, what he likes to do, as we see in his writing, is he's trying to illustrate and give us ways to appreciate the language beyond just the words, right? So the powerful cement, there's only one, there's more than one thing that's going to hold us together. Because think about this. How many people did we spend time with in our lives that suffered with the same alcoholism or hard drinking or drug addiction? Did we band up with those people in the bars or in the crack dens or in the back alleys and all of a sudden go together arm in arm to get better? No, we did not. All we did when we were around other sick people is keep each other sick, right? So what Bill is starting to plant the seed of here is, yes, having this shared history is important, but it's only one important thing. All right, we're going to get better together and have this common solution. And that's really what's going to bind us.
Can
Right?
I say one
So
more
that-
thing?
Please, please.
Okay, so as Bill's setting us up here, like Bill, as David said, he's constructing something for us here to look at. So we're looking at that paragraph, the great description of the fellowship. Wonderful description. Please, I hope you find that fellowship that you're craving. I hope that you can find that. But the common peril, the one common peril, again, is that we have this craving and this obsession. That is not enough. So please, if you're a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, stop saying go to 90 meetings and 90 days. Just don't drink and don't use. Please stop saying that. That is not the solution. That is killing people, by the way. Because if I could just stop on my own power, wouldn't I do that? If I had some sufficient power to stop my own using and drinking, my God, then I'm not powerless. But I am powerless. So I know what the problem is. Now we got to find out what the solution is. And we take common problem and common solution, and we do this work, we get a common spiritual experience. That's what we get. That's what we're driving for, to have this personal relationship with our Creator.
The tremendous fact for every one of us is that we have discovered a common solution. We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree, and upon which we can join in brotherly and harmonious action. This is the great news this book carries to those who suffer from alcoholism.
I have the definition of tremendous, which is described as astonishingly large, powerful, and extraordinary. So the extraordinary fact for every one of us is that we have discovered a common solution.
Oh, did we lose David again?
Yeah.
All right. I guess that means I'm up. So the extraordinary fact, based on the definition that Sam just gave us, the extraordinary fact. Okay, so big adjective here. Bill is not just sort of soft selling. We know he's a salesperson, right? A salesman. So he's not just saying, the fact for every one of us. He's saying the extraordinary fact for every one of us is that we've discovered a common solution. And so it is the solution. It is our way out. It is our approach to get better that's common to all of us, that's shared by all of us, right? We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree, and upon which we can join in brotherly and harmonious action. So it's a way in which we can absolutely agree. How is it that we get to the point of absolutely agreeing? By being in the common peril together and seeing the program recovery that has worked for other people. And upon which we can join in brotherly and harmonious action. So again, we're not just talking about a code of morals or a philosophy or a way of thinking or even a decision. Bill is letting us know early that this common solution that we can all agree on and march forward together is going to be based on action, not just action, harmonious action. I don't think we need to look up the word harmonious or harmony, Sam. You could if you want, but I'll just sort of give my impromptu definition of it. Things to be in harmony are in accord. They are in concert. They are conjoined and moving in the same direction. Right? So we can join in brotherly, together, and harmonious in sync action. And this is the great news this book carries to those who suffer from alcoholism. Guys, they didn't write a book here. Bill didn't just author a book that was all doom and gloom with all the focus on the illness and everything that was wrong with us. Yes, is there a lot of heavy stuff in here that's going to tell us, to drink is to die, and that we're suffering from spiritual disease and many other very serious matters. But the great news of the book, gospel, right, which actually means great news, is that for those who suffer from alcoholism, we've got this way out. We can all get on board. If we don't individually get in the way, if we all take the action together, we will get better. You back with us?
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. I don't know what's going on with my wonky Wi-Fi tonight. I'm not in control of that either, obviously. So are we still in that paragraph, third paragraph, page 17?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So
yep.
It's not a fact. It's a tremendous fact. It's a tremendous fact. Look at Bill. Dude, dropping the sledgehammer on us, man. A tremendous fact for every one of us that we discovered a common solution. The steps of the program. That's the action that we're talking about here. That is our common solution, the steps. And we have a way out. This is a promise, guys. It's a promise that we have a way out, that no longer do we have to suffer from this crippling, this chronic and progressive disease anymore, on which we can absolutely agree. The only reason I could possibly agree is that I accept the fact that I'm powerless, that I want to get busy and continue to do this work. And upon which we can join in brotherly and harmonious action, that is my responsibility as a step guide, as a sponsor, to make this enticing for you. Read Working with Others. Howard just did a wonderful work on the 12 step the other day, a workshop. It was brilliant. And the thing about that is there's 3 parts to the 12 step, right? That we've had a spiritual awakening. That's our promise, that we've had that work. But then we got to carry this message. That's the charge that we got to have. We get charged a fee for having that awakening, carrying this message, right? We got to do that. How do we do that? There's a description of it in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous on how we do that. Find out more about your man. Sit down with him. Have another meeting with this guy so that he can agree with brotherly and harmonious action. Brotherly means shoulder to shoulder on this whole thing. And this is the great news for us. Underline the great news. What is that? Do we go to that paragraph, the bottom of that? Do we do that? Okay. This book carries to those who suffer from alcoholism. We know what alcoholism is right now. We know that we suffer from this. We need to know how to recover from this thing. The great news, with precise, specific, and clear-cut directions that this book gives us, we can recover shoulder to shoulder in this thing. It's not a crapshoot like the old bastards that came to my treatment center told me that 9 out of 10 you guys are going to relapse. That would only be true if I didn't do anything. But if I went to a meeting, got myself a big book sponsor, and immediately found out that I am a real alcoholic or a drug addict and started doing this work, I can recover from this disease. It's not a crapshoot. 100% of us can get sober. All of us can get sober together, shoulder to shoulder.
All right, page 18. An illness of this sort, and we have come to believe it is an illness, involves those about us in a way no other human sickness can. If a person has cancer, all are sorry for him, and no one's angry or hurt. But not so with the alcoholic illness. For with it there goes annihilation of all the things worthwhile in life. It engulfs all whose lives touch the sufferers. It brings misunderstanding, fierce resentment, financial insecurity, disgusted friends and employers, warped lives of blameless children, sad wives and parents. Anyone can increase the list. And I think Ashton's got some medical definitions. We'll go Ashton and then Sam.
Yeah, so I have the medical definition of an illness. So illness is an unhealthy condition that affects one's mind and body. So in the sentence, an unhealthy condition that affects one's mind and body of this sort, and we have come to believe that it is an unhealthy condition, involves those about us in a way no other human sickness can. And sickness is basically the same thing as saying illness. I think maybe he just didn't want to say illness a third time in the sentence. So.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and so
Sam?
I have the definition for illness is sickness, just like Ashton said. So I wanted some further clarification on that. And so I have annihilation, which is complete destruction or obliteration. So in the sentence, where does it start? But not so with the alcoholic illness, for with it goes annihilation, complete destruction or obliteration of all things worthwhile in life.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you,
Sam.
Ashton. So this is this illness that they're speaking of is not a weakness or a moral dilemma. That's not what they're speaking about here. And they don't call it a disease as of yet because the AMA in 1956 said yeah, alcoholism is a disease. But prior to that, you're going to see the word illness in here until later in the book where it talks about disease. And let me just break down the word disease just in case. Dis-ease, discomfort, always discontented, whatever the case is, like dis-ease. But we're talking about an illness here. So then I'm going to take this statement here and I'm going to turn it into a question. An illness of, David, do you have an illness of this sort? And have you found that you come to believe that it is an illness? Do I believe that this is an illness? Do I believe that I have alcoholism? Once I have alcoholism, once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic, right? If I take a cucumber and I put it in brine and I take it out and I put it in the windowsill, it turns into a pickle, correct? But what do I do to make that pickle turn back into a cucumber? Nothing. There's nothing I can do. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic, right? Once a pickle, always a pickle. I will never be a cucumber again, thank goodness. But the thing is I have to understand that. I will never be able to drink like a normal person. We have studied this text up to this point. That's why it's so vital that I study this book and not just read it. I went to big book reads for a million years. We read Into Action, 45 minutes, and I don't, all the steps are in there, my Christ's sake. I got nothing out of it. But when we started studying this book, I started taking something out of it so I could carry this message to other people. Anyways, involves those about us in a way no other human sickness can, right? We know people that have cancer, dementia, Parkinson's. We all have compassion for that. But man, when I steal your generator, I take from your slender purse, I mean, I kind of wear you out, right? I mean, can't have a lot of sympathy for me any longer with this illness that I have. And a lot of people don't even believe that it is an illness. I know that it is. If a person has cancer, as they said, we're sorry for them. Go on a little bit farther. For with it, there goes annihilation. Annihilation means I'm going to die. I'm going to hurt a lot of people. I'm going to take a lot of people down with me. And all those things are worthwhile. With all those things worthwhile, and it engulfs all whose life touched to suffer. It affected my wife, my kids, my in-laws, my job. It affected everybody. And today, as a recovered alcoholic and a drug addict, it affects them in a positive way. People are counting on me to stay sober. And I just don't mean not drinking, because that is not the solution for me. I have to have a spiritual awakening, and I have a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of my spiritual condition. Meaning I get to do this work every day so that I can have a personal relationship with God and all the other people in my life. And I don't have this discontent. I don't draw drama and trauma into my life anymore. It just doesn't exist. That is the disciplines of 10 and 11 and 12. Just a spoiler alert in case you haven't. It brings misunderstanding, fierce resentment, financial insecurity, disgust to friends, employers, warped lives, and blame of children, sad wives and parents. Anyone can increase the list. Boy, that looks like it's going to land right on my fourth step, man. That's where all that stuff's going to be. And I'm going to see the truth in that my troubles are of my own making. It wasn't nothing to do with whether or not I was hugged enough, the color of my skin, my gender, the neighborhood I grew up in, the financial security I did or did not have. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic, but we have a common solution that we all can agree upon.
Look, go ahead.
I did have two more definitions: resentment and warp. Resentment is to resent is to feel strong, or to feel. Oh my goodness, why is this written like this? Sorry. It's a strong feeling of to relive, and then resentment is a persistent feeling of ill will and suppressed anger caused by a sense of injustice, insult, or wrong done. And then I also have warp, which is to twist or turn out of shape. So in the sentence, it brings misunderstanding, fierce ill will, to relive persistent feeling of suppressed anger caused by a sense of injustice, insult, injury, wrong done. Financial insecurity, disgusted friends and employers. Warped, to turn or twist out of shape lives of blameless children, sad wives, and parents. Anyone can increase the list.
Thanks, Sam. So I was starting to say that I'm always attuned to and trying to point out to you guys when Bill is using particular language, right? So what does he start off by saying here? He says, an illness of this sort, and we've come to believe it an illness. So remember the context here, 1939. And in the doctor's opinion, we read before this, the doctor uses the same language back on Roman numeral 28. We believe, and so suggested a few years ago, the action of alcohol in these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy. So the doctor was saying, we believe, and he put out a paper a couple of years before this saying, we believe alcoholism is an illness, it's a sickness, it's a disease. They couldn't prove it and substantiate it yet, but what Dr. Silkworth had learned from treating all these alcoholics and addicts, this was the conclusion, right? And if you guys remember from science class, I know it's painful and I never really liked science. They teach, we come up with a hypothesis, which is a theory, it's an idea. And then we got to go out and prove it or disprove of it, right? So Dr. Silkworth came up with this belief based on his hypothesis, and then he went and studied all these alcoholics and addicts. He said, still can't prove it, but this is what we believe, that this is an illness. And that's how he educated Bill. Remember, when Bill went to go in Dr. Silkworth's care, part of how Bill started to get better was understanding the sickness. And so the doctor said, I believe, Bill, this is what's going on with you. And so then Bill then perpetuated that language to the people that he helped, including us, by writing the book. He's saying it's an illness of this sort. Come to believe it an illness. Now, 80 plus years later, we know it's an illness. This isn't just we have poor morals, that we're just bad people. Now we've got almost a century of proof that this is an illness, and we've got a solution from it. They didn't have that, so they were using careful language that goes on to say involves those about us in a way no other human sickness can. Love this, and we all think about this. Person has cancer, all are sorry for him. No one was sorry for us, right? When we wrecked their people's cars, or we stole money from them, right? Or slept with their husbands or wives, and did all these awful things that we did, right? There's not a tremendous amount of sympathy when we were behaving that way, but we were sick. People didn't want to give us the benefit of the doubt for being sick, right? Because of all of the ways in which we harm people. David said all this, the second half of the paragraph ends up in the 4-step list. Damn right. And guess what comes out of the 4-step list? The 8-step list. All of these things are harms. Think about, how did I bring misunderstanding, and then what came out of misunderstanding, right? Fights and resentments, arousing suspicion and bitterness, fierce resentment, financial insecurity, spending the paycheck before we got home on Fridays, right? Disgusted friends and employers. How many promises do we make that we fail to fulfill? Just the warped lives of our kids. So many people here, about I would say 99% have got kids, and you had to work on this in your step work to come beyond the harms that you doled out to them. Sad wives and parents, anyone can increase the list. And as the book goes on, there's a couple more nice paragraphs that illustrate some of the other harms we did.
Let me expand a little bit more even on this. So what David just read there, and I'm going to give props to Terry, first of all. Like, read that one, at the bottom of that paragraph. It says, brings misunderstanding, fierce resentment, financial insecurity, disgust of friends and employers, warped lives, and blame his children. Sad wives, plural. 2 wives, 3 wives, however many wives you got. Got to have a little chuckle there, guys. It's funny. Some of us had. Thanks, Terry. You know, so it's like, dude, this is why we study the book, right? It's like, let's not, rule 62, don't take yourself so darn serious. So, but, okay, so what is this here? I've had guys I sponsor said, I hurt nobody but myself, right? My drinking only hurt me. Really? Let's go to page 18 and see if that's true or not. So, did your brother stay up all night worrying about you, that maybe you'd end up in an ER or in a ditch somewhere? That is a harm that I have caused when I have to make other people worry about my well-being, Christ's sake. Well, we're talking about the things that this is another description of unmanageability in my life. The second half of the first part, the real problem of alcoholism. All these things, the misunderstanding, the fierce resentment, the financial security. Did I have that? Did I cause that in other people's life? You bet your dollar I had. And back up a little bit more into the paragraph. When you have an illness, what do you do with that? When you have a normal illness, if you have the flu, you have COVID or strep throat or something, what do? You seek out a doctor. If you have some kind of issue, you need to go see a counselor. You go seek out a counselor. If you got to go do something with a priest, you go see a priest, right? Normal, ordinary people go do that. What do? We come to Alcoholics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous because we understand. That's where we come. This is the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. Be armed with the facts about yourself. Know these harms that are done. Clear up the wreckage of your past. Get free of the bondage of self, and then carry this message to other people and live a life beyond anything you've ever imagined before. It continues to get better. It really, really does.
And if we're emphatic about stressing these harms and things like this as it comes out in the book, it's not to make anybody feel bad. The whole point of this in doing our 4th step and 5th step, it's not about beating ourselves up. We're supposed to be hard on ourselves so we get to the truth. But this is not about self-flagellation. It's about just understanding the reality of the lives we've lived, the harms we've done, but why? So we can make it right, move on, and not do them again. That's the real purpose of it. It's not to bury ourselves up to our necks. It's just to see it and get better. All right. We hope this volume will inform and comfort those who are or who may be affected. There are many. It's understatement of the year.
Yeah. So with that,
highly competent.
Just real briefly.
No, please.
So if someone else wants to read this book, give me your copy of your book, right? My wife, if she chooses to, my father-in-law, my sister, yeah, give them the book so they can be informed too. It's okay. It's fine. As long as I'm studying it, they can read it. And they'll probably figure this thing out. My experience quickly is I sponsored a guy one time. I still sponsor him. He's been sober for a number of 24 hours, and his wife read this book. He came home, had the book. She goes, "What is this?" And he told her. She read it one night. And she goes, "Dude, if this is all you got to do, what is your problem?" It's like, dude, we read this thing for the rest of our life. Some things pop out of here. And I go, no wonder I'm having all these problems. It's like, Jesus Christ, I'm not even doing a 10-step every day. She understood it completely. Normal people do. I study this every day. I study the big book every day.
Highly competent psychiatrists who have dealt with us have found it sometimes impossible to persuade an alcoholic to discuss his situation without reserve. Strangely enough, wives, parents, and intimate friends usually find us even more unapproachable than do the psychiatrist and the doctor. And I know Ashton's got some medical definitions.
Yeah, so I have the definition of psychiatrist, which is a medical doctor who specializes in mental health, including substance use disorder. They are also the doctors who specialize in medications that are prescribed for mental illnesses. So highly competent medical doctor who specializes in mental health and substance use disorder who have dealt with us have found it sometimes impossible to persuade an alcoholic to discuss his situation without reserve.
Thank you. Sam, anything? No? Okay. So I'm just gonna reread. Sometimes the big book language gets a little clunky with some of the words that Bill uses. And again, it's a little formal at times, and this was just a different era. So what's he really saying in this short paragraph? He's saying, and I think most of us know, I mean, that was a great medical explanation. Thank you, Ashton. Many of us know, many of us have worked with psychiatrists. Mental health, right? And these days, it's mostly around prescribing meds to get our brains working right. So most of us have seen, not all, but many have seen psychiatrists, right? So here's what Bill was saying. He's saying, great head shrinkers, great psychiatrists have sometimes found it impossible for us to have open conversation with them. We can't be honest with great psychiatrists. Okay, that's statement number one he's making. Here's statement number two. He's saying, strangely enough, although it doesn't really seem that strange to me, is that our wives, husbands, our parents, our good friends, we're even less willing to talk with them about our problems. Anybody here, raise your hand if you want, or don't, nod, whatever you want to do, have a friend, an employer, a family member try to talk to you about your drinking or drug use from a place of concern? Yeah, I sure as hell did. Most of us did. And how did I react? How did we react? I have a pretty strong feeling. I can say collectively, we probably all had a lot of anger and belligerent denial. Maybe if we were in sort of a gentle mood, we'd be like, yeah, I know I got a problem. I'm going to do something about it. And then what did I do about it? I went and drank and drugged over it. That was my solution. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, so the word reserve there means slow to reveal emotions. So, right? I'm sitting in, dude, and I told this story probably here or some other place. I went to a therapist, and David's done the same thing. He's got a great story of like long before Alcoholics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, right? Trying to solve my issues for my family, by the way, not for me. And I went there, and this guy was just so amused with me later on, I found. He said he wanted to write a thesis on me. I thought he meant me. He wanted to write about alcoholics and how big of a liars they were. It's like, dude, I could not get in touch. The only emotion I ever got in touch with was anger. That was it. And anger didn't even stay very long. It's usually typically rage. So I had a very hard time. I couldn't work well with psychiatrists for another reason. I couldn't be honest with them, leave alone myself. And strangely enough, wives and parents and intimate friends usually find us even more approachable. That's untreated alcoholism, even if I stop drinking. And I'm worse when I'm not drinking. I'm not better when I'm not drinking. I have to have a spiritual solution. And when I don't have a spiritual solution, that's the bedevilments in my life. That's all the things that we read in the prior paragraph. Those things show up. And then I am unapproachable, and no one wants to be around me anymore. I don't want to be that guy. And I promise you, if you do this work honestly and thoroughly and diligently, you will not be that guy because you'll have a personality change. So I've had a personality change sufficient enough to recover from the disease of alcoholism.
On this topic, when I think about the investments I've made in life, like I was an investor in a restaurant one time, was around for a few years, didn't do so great, went out of business. I invested in some stocks, right? We get in the stock market, some of them lose their value, things like that. Not great investments. The worst investment I ever made in my life, I think, was going to therapy prior to getting sober. It was a colossal waste of time and money because I could not talk with a psychiatrist, a therapist, without reserve. I couldn't be honest. Like I knew I had a problem. Something inside of me said, dude, go get some help. Of course, I wasn't ready to come to AA or CA yet, right? But I'm like, I'm going to go to the therapist. Colossal waste of time and money. I couldn't be honest with them because I couldn't even be honest with myself. But guess what? After I got clean and sober and recovered from the hopeless state of mind and body, after a couple of years, I went back to therapy, and I've been back to therapy many times since. The book talks about this too. We don't get 100% better, some of us, strictly from the book. What the book does, we get to God, we recover, we get into unity, we become part of the fellowship, we get into service, right? We have a strong circle and triangle life. And then that enables us to go and get the additional help we need. Right? That was my experience. Therapy was great. I was recovered from the hopeless condition of mind and body. Okay, squiggly writing, as Joe and Charlie would say. So that means it's extra important. Why? And we probably brought this up already, but we'll just state it again in case you weren't here for it. In 1939, when books like this were being printed, there's a whole discipline around printing books. We take it for granted. We're like, it's just this thing on paper and it's got a bunch of words. It seems like a simple exercise, but it really isn't. It's a whole industry and discipline called typesetting. And Joe McHugh of Joe and Charlie, he was a professional typesetter. And he would talk about, they would have strategy meetings about how to lay a book out and where to break paragraphs and all these things. And to put italics in a printed book in 1939 was a very expensive proposition. Right? So every time in the big book they chose to do this, they were really trying to emphasize it, so much so that they were paying extra money to produce the emphasis. And so the squiggly writing, the italics, very important. But the X problem, so just for continuity, the last paragraph talked about how we basically can't talk to anybody about our alcoholic or addiction problem with psychiatrists, and we can't talk to it about people that love us that are in our lives either. But it goes on to say, but the X problem drinker who was found this solution, who is properly armed with facts about himself, can generally win the entire confidence of another alcoholic in a few hours. Until such an understanding is reached, little or nothing can be accomplished. Again, slimming it down. I can't be honest with a psychiatrist. I can't be honest with my wife. I can be honest with another alcoholic, though. Tell me about your drinking. This is the genesis of everything AA and CA and everything else that came from it. Bill went to help Bob. And how did Bill help Bob? By helping himself, by saying, I'm going to talk to you about my alcoholism. Dr. Bob said, I don't want to hear it. What do you have to tell me about how I can get better? Bill's like, I'm not. I'm going to tell you about my experience. And then what happened? Bill won Bob's confidence by talking about himself. And by the way, who here, alcoholics, addicts, doesn't love to talk about themselves? Right? I mean, I look here and say, hey, David, the other David is my second favorite speaker. Terry's my third favorite. Guess who my first favorite speaker is? And A. Myers Raymer, it's me. I love to talk about myself. I am a selfish, self-centered, egocentric alcoholic, right? But the beauty of it is me talking about myself to somebody who needs help can win their confidence and enable them to get better.
Sam or Ashton, do you guys have any definitions? Okay, cool. All right, thank you, though. So nowhere in the book does it even mention sponsor, right? Doesn't mention sponsor in the book, but maybe this is not maybe. This is a really good spot in italic, squiggly writing. It's suggesting this is a sponsor. But the ex-problem drinker, so the sober alcoholic, the recovered alcoholic, who has found this solution, worked the 12 steps, had a spiritual awakening, and is properly armed with the facts about himself. Understands step 1 goes into 2, 2 into 3, 3 into 4, and so on and so forth, can generally win the entire confidence of an alcoholic in a few hours. Timeline. Need to know that. Howard brings this up all the time. We do it too in treatment. How short of a window do we have with the new guy? We don't know. We don't know. Do we have an hour? We have a month? We have a week? We don't know. Maybe it's that day. So in a few hours, if I'm willing to give up 2 hours of my time to be inconvenienced, which I should be, in my experience anyways, if I'm not being inconvenienced in Cocaine Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm not doing enough. I sponsor double digits guys, and that's not to pat me on the back, but I always like to take people through the steps. It makes me want to stay alive and well in this work. And then it says, until such an understanding is reached, little or nothing can be accomplished. So when we approach these people, it doesn't say that we wait for them to approach us. We approach them. I didn't walk up to any of you guys when I first got sober. I sat in the back of the room, and when you guys started doing that prayer thing, I got up and left. I had to go to the bathroom. You know that, right? No, I had to go. I had to get out to my car. I had to get out of there. Oh, my God, I'm never coming back to that again. That's ridiculous. My responsibility as a recovered alcoholic is to approach them and not just give them my phone number. Get their phone number, too. David's very good at this. His sponsees are very good at this. I'm okay with this. And call them. If I get your phone number, I am calling you. I just forget to get your phone number sometimes. Getting better at it. Got to work at this. Get their phone number, call them. How are you doing, bro? Like, go to meeting tonight? This is a life-giving, life-saving program. My obligation here, and the charge for me having a spiritual awakening, is to pass this message on to the suffering alcoholic. So, have I had a spiritual awakening? Am I armed with the proper facts about myself? Yeah, I'm a recovered alcoholic and a drug addict. Have I won the entire confidence of another alcoholic in a few hours? You bet your butt I have. And man, I tell you, when their eyes open up and they start to do this work, I've done this work in 2 weeks' time with guys, and I've done it a lot longer than that. But 2 weeks' time, gone through the steps. Why? It's so vital that they get to God, to a power greater than themselves. I don't drag my feet on this. How many times in the meetings do you hear? I remember when I first got sober, I remember this gal always promoted this. I swear to God, she was promoting it. Step a year. Dude, I'm coming up on 24 years. That means that would be my second time through the book? No, she didn't even go through the book. She probably went through the 12 and 12 because it's this thin, and it looks like it's a lot easier. Good commentary, but no directions on how to work the steps. No, that's terrible information. You kill people with that kind of stuff. So I'm armed with the facts about myself. I have the ability to generally win the entire confidence of an alcoholic. But if they don't want this, then I can't make them do this, and then I go work with someone else. But the bottom line here is this squiggly writing for me is a good description of what a sponsor is supposed to be. If you don't have one, please suggest that you get a big book sponsor.
Yeah, reach out to us. We'll hook you up with someone. We'll help you or we'll hook you up with someone. Women can reach out to, we'll redirect you to Sam or Ashton and some of the other females that we're tight with. Abby, we've got a great network of men and women that are doing this thing out of the book. So let's break down the language a little bit more here as well. So the X problem drinker, so which by the way, not cured. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. David took great pains to say that, right? But drinking is no longer a problem for me. This is an explicit promise of the 10th step. That's why the language Bill's using here. It's no longer a problem once I'm recovered and I stay recovered. So the X problem drinker who's found this solution, what solution? This solution. The 10 pages of the doctor's opinion, the first 164 pages, pages 1 through 164, is the solution. And how it's the problem, it's the solution. And as we say in our intro, how to get the action from the problem to the solution. Who is properly armed with facts about himself. How do I get properly armed with facts about myself without jumping too far ahead? I'm just going to tell you. For me, for the people about me in recovery, step 4 and step 5. You'll notice, those of you, we're all Zoomers here, right? We all go to lots of other Zoom meetings. You'll notice there's been an increasing trend in strong literature, big book meetings. They say, if you haven't completed your 5th step, don't comment, right? Because we don't want to hear your opinion on experience you've never had. How can I be armed with facts about myself until I've completed my 4th and 5th step? I can't. What did I just tell you guys? Wasted months in therapy because I wasn't honest with myself, much less a therapist. I must go do my house cleaning. I must go do some fact finding and fact facing. And that's how I get armed with the facts about himself. Again, fact, fact, fact. Bill loves that word. So do I. I love the black and white. So if drinking's no longer a problem to me, because I found the solution in this book, I did my step work, so I'm properly armed with facts about myself, I can generally win the entire confidence of another alcoholic in a few hours. Here's the caveat, and some of you have experienced this. The person I'm talking with or talking at has to be willing to listen. I can spin the greatest yarn. If they're not ready, I ain't selling. I'm just sharing my experience, guys, right? I'm not going to badger somebody into the rooms. My tight-knit group I was talking about with David and Sam and Ashton and Abby and some other people on here tonight, we get together. We're an informal study group, but we're going to form it into a real group because we're studying the tradition. It's all about the group. One of the things we're worried about is we don't want sick people who haven't gotten better coming in and messing up the group, right? We want people who have done the work, who are armed with facts about themselves to come in. We don't want to drag in every drunk, right? Plenty of other meetings. You guys drag the drunks in. What we want to talk about is the problem, the solution, and how we get from A to B. And then the last thing, until such an understanding is reached, little or nothing can be accomplished. Yeah. If I can't relate, if I don't think I have the same problem as you, why on earth would I ask your opinion or help on how I can get better? I wouldn't.
And if you're looking for a
to double
sponsor,
back on.
Just briefly. So if you're looking for a sponsor, I think this is a good description. Find someone, an ex-problem drinker, a sober alcoholic, not a sober, recovered alcoholic, who's found the solution, right? Had a spiritual awakening. It's a good question to ask your sponsor. Have you had a spiritual awakening? And are you armed with the facts about himself? Have you worked all 12 steps? This is a good way. It's okay to interview the sponsor. It's really okay. I expect you to interview me. And then you can sit down and have this conversation that David just talked about here. So that's briefly, it's just one reference in the book about maybe this is how you find a sponsor. This is what a sponsor should look like. I hope I do the best I can with that.
Okay. I think we're going to pause there.
Mm-hmm.